Welcome to Who's Your Neighbor? I'm Terry McGill, coming to you from Portland, Oregon, and I have another one of your neighbors tonight that you probably haven't met. This whole Who's Your Neighbor show came about because after COVID hit, I began reading so many stories of the effects on people's lives. I didn't realize, and a lot of people didn't realize, how much the interaction that we have with others affects our quality of life. And when some of the worst stories that I read was when somebody all of a sudden, instead of having the toxic person go to work, they were staying home all day long, and they were, not locked in, but they were in the same home with them all day long. They didn't get the respite time that they used to. So many other stories. So what I wanted to do, and have been doing now, this is about the 12th of your neighbors, some of whom I've never met. Some of whom, like tonight's guest, I've known, 15 years, maybe a little more. Ute was a Waldorf school teacher in my son's school here in Portland. And now you're going to be fascinated, because I'm fascinated. I've got some questions I want to ask her, and just, hear more about what she does. Now, you may know people who work with animals, not veterinarians, but others who, without a license, they've developed their background, their shtick, and hearts as big as the ocean. And that describes Ute. She has a second aspect that I'm going to save for a little bit later. So would you welcome with me Ute Luppertz?
Hi, Terry.
It's so good to see you again and talk with you again. I think it's been a year and a half or two since we saw each other.
Oh yeah, it has been a while.
It's
so nice to see you. How are you?
I'm doing well, and you're just glowing, so I know you're doing well.
Thank you.
And I watch your posts on Facebook, so I know some of what you do. And I noticed one thing that it's like, wow, now that's unique. You work with animals, but you specialize or focus on older animals?
Yes. I love the seniors. I love the ones that have gray hair and gray muzzles. And I especially love animals that are preparing to pass over. So that's an area of my work that I'm very passionate about.
So part of me is going, wow, it's wonderful that you're specializing, because what I know about specialists is when we zero in on something, there's a lot to know that we don't know unless we zero in on it. So what is it that you bring to older animals? Some of the, just off the top of your head, what do you see people bringing their animals to you? Why?
Well, I think there's a very sacred time when we get older. A lot of humans might discover their spirituality. I see something similar. It's not a good description, but I see something similar with animals. And so what I feel is really, really helpful is that I support the family, the humans who are dealing with the impending loss of their companion, be it a cat or a dog or, parrot, horse, you name it, right? And with animals, inadvertently, they're often objectified. So we take them to the vet, obviously, right? And in most cases, humans also make decisions about when the animal is going to die. And that is not good or bad. I'm just saying this is what is, right? And I find that a lot of people are very, very burdened with the agony, with the grief, of the impending death, you know? And also, I find that animals are not taken enough into the equation. So in my work, it's a blend of very practical hospice support, but also intuitively connecting with the animal and seeing, how are you doing? Because we look at them like we might look at a child, like, to have some kind of an analogy here, right?
Right, yeah.
And when I do intuitive work, and for those of you who wonder, I do a lot of animal communication sessions, and they include also a very practical aspect when the animal shows a lot of pain, and it's hard for the human to discern, is it pain or is she just tired, right? And what I feel we underestimate are two things. One is that the animals know us so well. Many of them are actually more concerned about our well-being than about their demise. There's much more, in many cases, I found animals are much more willing to surrender to this transition or to this initiation, as I would call it, right? Yeah. So I think people underestimate how much they want us to be okay, how much they want to comfort us. Yeah. And that's one aspect. The other aspect is that I feel that all of us, myself included, have still a whole lot to learn about being present when there is this transition that is so mysterious. It doesn't matter which spiritual affiliation we have, as far as I'm concerned. It's a mysterious, very sacred thing. And when I say sacred, I want to also say, sometimes there are situations where we are suddenly confronted with a death, say an accident or someone collapses. It can happen with people too, obviously, right? So it's not always that we sit there and we know it's going to happen. But I really feel that in the Western culture, even for those of us who are more spiritually inclined, right? It's underserved. It's underserved. We are supposed to get on with it. We're supposed to do this or that. We would never do that with a human family member, right? And it's not malintent. It's just how we are conditioned. And I would like to shed light on this. And I also want to empower people to really connect as best they can and be very authentic and honest with themselves and also with the animal. So one thing, for example, that I hear a lot of people say is, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And it isn't. Their heart is ripped apart, and the animals feel that. I'm not saying, just throw your emotions on your pet, but being authentic is such an invitation to presence, even when it's tough. And presence can be a few seconds, depending on the threshold that we have with our own pain points, right? So for me, it is the most sacred aspect of the work that I'm doing. If I can support an animal to be at peace, if I can support families, humans, to be available for the experience with all that can entail, I feel I have fulfilled my mission if I get to do that. And that sometimes means I'm very quiet and I'm holding space. Sometimes people want a little bit more input, right? And then we see, do you trust who you're partnering up with, a vet, the crematorium, whatever choices you make? Do you feel comfortable with a route of treatment? Do you feel empowered to serve the soul that shares her life with you?
So you're a loving companion at the end stage of the pet's life, not just for the pet, but for the family?
Yes, yes. Yes.
That's so powerful. We didn't have that. We had 3 pets, and with my son, our son, and when they transitioned, it was only with Bruno the last of the three, that and our son has said, geez, I was hoping I would be away at college when this happened, because he didn't want to be there. I
Yeah.
didn't know how to guide him at the time. Um,
Yeah.
and so all three of us, we were fortunate because we went to a vet and they said, would you like to stay here? Would you like to be with him? This is what you'll see over the next 10 or 15 minutes, but stay in here as long as you want to.
Yeah.
And then they left us by ourselves.
Yes. Yes.
So we could cry.
Yes. Crying is super important. It's liquid love,
Yeah. So you also go a step further, though. I've been reading about your training program for others. Could you speak about the death doula program? That's what I call it.
Yeah, that's what I call it too. So someone approached me a few years ago and said, there is nothing out there, and now we have actually a lot of programs that people can access all over the United States. And I just decided that the bag of tricks, the bag of skills that I have, that I put that into a structured format. And I started offering a one-day workshop. This was a number of years ago. And it was so well received that I fleshed it out a little bit. So when people are curious about that, everybody, anybody who wants to know anything about what I do, they can talk to me. I talk to people for free so that they get to know who I am and that I get to know who they are, right?
Right. And so we do have your contact information, and we'll put that in the chat room so that those that are watching this can go back and take a look at it and connect with you.
Thank you. Thank you. And the short of it is that when people do this training, it's now a longer weekend workshop, like 3.5 days. They will get tools they can, it can be someone who has an animal. It can be someone who has friends. A lot of people are trained in some spiritual modalities, and some people are like dog trainers or daycare providers for animals and what have you. And in essence, the people that come to me, they want to have some more tools and they don't want to be as helpless. They also want to support their friends and clients. And that's what I offer. When you look now, you see other trainings, as I mentioned before. I think one of the things that I highlight is not only practical stuff, but also self-awareness and mindfulness. So there is definitely a component, while we get very, very practical tools, that we're also looking at ourselves. Who am I in this process? How can I hold space for someone without being overbearing or being underbearing or being too clinical or being too that, and it comes back to that thing of how authentic can I be? An example would be that on occasion, clients ask me to be present when they have a euthanasia in their home. And when people are local and know me and they want that support, I provide this. And some of my students would never be willing or wanting to do this. And then I say, don't offer it. Be really clear on how you can hold space, And I think if we are honest and transparent and we say, this is what I do for you, and this is what I don't do for you, then the other party says, thank you. I ask you to do this for me, and then I ask someone else to do that for me, And we, in the training, we talk a lot about, different kinds of scenarios. And most people come either because they lost a pet and they know how lonely that is.
Yeah.
Even it is very lonely. With humans, we have all of these rituals, and they have different flavors depending on the religion, or whatever affiliation people have. Or people come because they work in a modality and they just don't know what to do. And, there might be a book or two about the stages of grief, and that's about it. And luckily, the landscape is changing. And I'm really on this mission to support this changing landscape and really look at the soul component of this equation, which is why I'm so passionate about this.
So it's obvious listening to you. You've done this for a long time. How many years do you think it's been?
The intuitive work started a little later. That I've been doing since 2010. So I started doing rehabilitation in 2007. And then the whole intuitive aspect, actually, I was woken up to this. I'd done intuitive work with humans before, and so I wasn't that green, but it actually really was brought to my awareness when my dog Shiva died, and really it was very different than I thought what it would be. It was very dramatic leading up to this event, but when he actually passed, which was here in my house, it was amazing. It was amazing. I was crying, so no, I was sad, but
Sure.
It was amazing. And I was like, what was I thinking? And I got like, the spirit dog whacked me on the head saying, come on, you can do this. I'm like, you're right. So that's his legacy in essence, what we're talking about, which I'm forever, ever, ever grateful for, that this dog raised my life. And for the uninitiated listener, honestly, it was a lot of hard work when he was alive. So it wasn't all like a walk in the park, but boy, did I learn stuff.
Putting any kind of a program together is not a walk in the park. There's so many aspects. I'm still learning about these Who's Your Neighbor shows. There's so many little details. It's like, you want a what? But I hadn't thought of that one yet.
Crazy cat lady. Oh no, that was me. Sorry.
There's a whole bunch of jokes about you want a what? And that's back to you and what you do. I'm so drawn to it because I'm thinking about, because we've been talking for several weeks, and I'm going, yeah, animals, older animals, rehabilitation or the transition. What was your term for that? Initiation?
I feel it is that. There are many terms for this. I feel it is an initiation. It is for me every time I'm privileged to be present, physically speaking,
With the animal passing over?
Yes. And I've also seen energetic. There was just also a freedom that I witnessed in some situations because the body wasn't in the way anymore.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to pretty anything up, but I feel everything can be experienced at the same time, the grief, the dread, the what am I going to do without you? And this amazing illumination that I've actually seen in the auric field, even though technically the body was dead, but
Right.
It was just incredible. I'm like, wow, am I lucky that I get these teachings,
It's really fortunate that you're able to perceive that too, because it gives you something to share with others that's outside most people's experience. I'm just fascinated with what you can offer to people. It's like, wow, this is totally neat.
But we all have these gifts. We are all, we have different access points. Not everybody has the same vision. Some people see with their hands, right? And you might mention a thing or two about that. And some people hear. I mean, there are many, many different ways to perceive things. I just want to say, it's not that it's just a few privileged people that were born with this. I think we all have it. It's just it's just hidden under a lot of stuff.
seeing is hidden. And in my experience, because I've been involved with this literally all my life, although I slammed the gate shut on it when I was really young, because people told me, don't do that or you're going to wind up in an insane asylum. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But then it's just started wanting to come out. When you mention hands, I don't actually see with my hands. I have a transmission called Tao Healing Hands. And so it's like turning on a light switch.
Yep.
And you've experienced it, haven't you?
You did this with one of my dogs when you visited.
That's what I remember. It's been a couple of years, but yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Were you able, I'm curious, were you able to perceive the energy in any way that was?
Yes. You know, I know my dog like my socks. I mean, that sounds weird, but I know I can tell how my animals respond to someone's energy, and I remember vividly that he went into a trance-like state when you were visiting and sat on the couch with him and you put your hand on his belly. Do you remember my dog Pablo?
I just remember, but I don't remember the specifics.
Oh, I do. See, this was a long time ago, and there was some kind of a crisis, and I don't remember what that was, but he was going through something, and you put your hand on his belly, and I'm like, ooh. And, it's not that I see it on the outside, but I could sense how he shifted and how he synced up with you. And that's the beauty. He didn't argue with you and say, Terry, what is the weird stuff that you're doing? That's the beauty about animals. They either respond to the energy or they don't.
For me, with the Tao Healing Hands, I got the early version back in 2010 called Divine Healing Hands, and Tao just is a higher level. And after, 12 years now, Terry doesn't do this. I know I don't do it. I turn the transmission on. It happens. It doesn't, sometimes I can feel my hand vibrating and feels like it's 3 times as large as it is.
Yeah.
But mostly I'm just aware of what's happening with the person or the animal. And yeah.
That's awesome.
So if anyone is watching that's interested in knowing more about this Tao Healing Hands, we'll put a link in the chat room where you can go check it out. Yeah. The program has incidentally been changed recently. We just held the first of the new way day before yesterday. This is Tuesday, on Sunday. And instead of an intense 2.5 days where you go, what happened? Now it's one day in January, or 1 month, the next month, and that's just on self-healing. The next month is healing yourself and others, family. And then if people want to do it professionally, then there's a 2-day workshop the third month where they get the download that gives them the ability to do home blessings, business blessings, much more than, family, and pets are part of family as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, let me go back to you, because I know that you do these death doula. I got the name right? You do these trainings. How often do you do them? 2-3 times a year?
2 to 3 times a year, and there's one coming up at the end of March that you can find on my website. And
so this will be March 2022.
Yes.
If they're watching this in 2023 or 24. Yeah.
And then October. So I have 3 trainings planned for this year. And we
Great.
See yeah.
And how long did you say they were now?
They start Thursday nights and they go through Sunday. So we have a very jam-packed schedule.
I would imagine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What kind of follow-up is there for the people who go through your training? Support?
We have a private Facebook group where people can talk to each other and they can post information, they can ask questions. And they also have me, because anybody who works with me, and that is not, so on occasion there's mentoring, and on other occasions we do some other collaborations. People get a ton of information, and then in our private group, people can say, oh, there is another webinar with animal communicator so-and-so, or I really like this article about natural death here from Brighthaven, this and that. So we are sharing resources. And then I know that, I don't know whether they still do it. I had a lot of people from Canada in the last few trainings, and they just hooked up with each other. They don't need me to do this. And then I get questions, and then people, so people sometimes say, oh, I have someone who wants to do this. How would I get started? What would I do? And then I say, this is what I do. What is good for you? And I'm giving examples. And at the very tail end of the training, it used to be a separate workshop. I just rolled it in one this year. We talk about what could it look like when you talk about pet death, and pet hospice, and what is it that you bring to the table, So is it Terry with a Dao healing hands training? Is it Reiki? Is it something else? Is it, fill in the blank. And people that really feel, oh, this is the right direction, they do, many of them who are very serious do these workshops more than once. It's like we learn how to ride the bicycle and then we have to practice.
Right.
And they also really find their own way of doing this. The one thing that I caution against when we're in the session is, don't call yourself anything if you can't answer questions. So because it's a fascinating concept, but just say things that you can actually embody and explain to people.
That's so important.
Right?
And that's missing. I used to be a realtor, as you know. And the trainings were fake it until you make it.
Yeah.
Make a promise and then find out how to keep it.
Yeah.
That never felt right.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think also in the, say, intuitive spiritual healing world, I see a lot of inflated things where I wonder what that is. But it's, we all have our own journey. And I'm just thinking, if you call yourself something and someone says, what is that? Have an answer. And it doesn't have to be the answer that I give when people ask me. It's yours, So.
What you mentioned reminds me, and you may remember when Rajneesh was here in Eastern Oregon, and other listeners may not, but there was this guru from India with, I forget, 23 Rolls Royces and 17 Rolex watches. And he didn't manage the ranch, they called it. Somebody else did that was in the group, because he was doing silent. He was just in silence and meditating. And there were some real issues that came up, serious issues. And then he left. It winds up 20 years later, I run across him. He's now calling himself Osho. He's a wonderful being. He was probably wonderful before, but he wasn't he wasn't in charge of anything. He was just letting somebody else run it. He doesn't care about Rolexes and Rolls Royces anymore, because he's matured. The interesting thing that I found is, I was really surprised. People can have great gifts, but they aren't mature in how they use them all the time.
Yeah, grounded. Yeah.
And your training is what you've been voicing for the last 10 or 15 minutes is so important, because this is all about what is sacred. And that means that you don't make promises or name yourself things that you don't even know the definition for. It's about honesty. And you mentioned transparency. It's communication. And I was really looking forward to tonight. And I'm hearing you're putting into words what I knew had to be there, but I hadn't heard it. And I just really appreciate it. So for your actual work with rehabilitation, then people can connect with you through your webpage.
Yeah.
And
For free intro sessions, so people could, send me an email and we set up a time to talk. Or
we've got your email up there. We've got your webpage up there, so they can connect with you. They can find out about how to connect with you for an aging pet that needs help.
Yeah,
they can connect with you.
Or animals that are not old. But the majority of my clients have aging pets, but I also work with very fearful animals because I love them. I love the shy ones.
That was really apparent when I was over at your house that day. It's like, wow, you were just, and that was new to me back then. I hadn't recognized soul quality in animals then. Yeah, this much.
Yeah.
But you had that much. And I'm going, wow.
And I still have to pick up the dog poop. That hasn't changed.
Yeah. So what's it called? Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water?
Yes.
After enlightenment, there's nothing different.
Take the bags with you and the flashlight if you walk them in the dark.
Yeah. I can remember those days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ute, I want to thank you so much for coming tonight. And I hope you've got friends, family, and tribe that are watching your webpage. And if not, they're going to be able to replay it. In fact, they can replay it if they want to hear your voice again.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for thinking of me. I feel so blessed. So thank you.
You're one of Portland's treasures. Do you know, you are. Do you know in China they have what's called national treasures? The Chinese government has a crew. They have a whole bunch of people over scouring all of China for who is the best house painter, who's the best picture painter, who writes the best calligraphy, who does this, who does that. The very best ones, they're made, I forget what the term is, but they're termed a national treasure. So this isn't the United States, this is Portland, but even at the national level, my experience with you and then listening to you more tonight, you're going to be, I would just urge you, consider yourself a treasure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you for having me. Really.
And I'll stay in touch.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you. So one more edition of Who's Your Neighbor? I am so fascinated, as you can tell, with these wonderful guests that some I've been connected with 25 years, and others like the I just blanked out on her name, Street Books. Had never met her before, except I went to donate some books, and it's like, this is an incredible program. So there's been, I think with Ute tonight, this is a round dozen of treasures here in, yes, we're in the Portland, Oregon metro area, and we're a digital society anymore. So dial in, connect in, send an email, go to the webpage wherever you are in the world, and discover more about pets and people who love them, especially Ute. And you've had a chance to to feel her passion. I just love it because when I speak with these people, my heart opens more. It's like, wow, I love connecting with people who love what they do and who are doing such important work. Well, so I won't keep on going because I'm still re-experiencing and thinking and processing after listening to Ute. It's just like, wow. So I want to leave you with one other thing, and that is the whole concept of Tao healing hands. If you have a family member, a pet, your finances, or your house, there is a transmission called Tao healing hands. Relatively new. It's been around officially since about 2010. And I think there's only 10 or 11,000 of us that have received that around the world. But it's an incredible gift. And I invite you to check over in the webpage there where it says 5 levels of creation. That's the philosophy behind how does it work. So, if you're interested, check it out. Some people have told me, I'm looking for another tool for my portfolio. Really, what do you do? Well, I'm a veterinarian, or I'm a medical doctor, or I'm a whatever, and they want to be able to do more, and so they check out Tao Healing Hands transmission. Anyway, that's there for you if you'd like to check it out. And until next week, Tuesday night, and these are recorded incidentally, so you can go back and watch them again. You don't have to be here at 7:30 on a Tuesday evening. Just go to the wherever you found it. It'll be there because they're archived. So until next week, I'm Terry McGill in Portland, Oregon, and come again next week and find out who's your neighbor.